5, share an experience where you strongly disagreed with the decision made by a group you were a member of. How did you handle it moving forward? And we're going to begin with Rob Mansky.
I wanted to go back on a personal experience from a few years ago, so far back that it doesn't even impact the institution where I was at, so that way no one can trace it back to UWSP. I was a part of a team of individuals at a job in my other institution where I disagreed very strongly with the decision made by a peer that the institution was going to implement and the group was in support of. Bottom line is I believe that this decision jeopardized the safety and the security of our students at this college. So what I did first, I discussed it with my supervisor. I let her know what my concerns were. I spelled it all out and then brought it up to the group. I brought it up to the group individually. I was a lot younger at that time, and I told the group that I couldn't support the decision. I addressed the concern, the issue. I didn't address the person. I didn't address the personality. Was not well received by my peer. He called me out. He called me unprofessional. He called me immature. But I felt like I needed to do that. I needed to bring it up. I addressed the concern that I had. I didn't address it as a personal attack on the individual, but that's personally how I deal with disagreement and conflict. I deal with respect. Moving forward with this person, I continue to do my job. I met with him individually to try to resolve the issue, and we moved forward. And eventually, the institution did choose to stop doing the unsafe practice, but it took them 2 years. And my personal philosophy is that disagreement in a group is often unavoidable. It's how we respond to those disagreements that make a cohesive group. My philosophy regarding conflict and disagreements is to address the issue, not the person, and to disagree with respect.
Thank you, Rob. Next is Ed Morganroth.
Yeah, I think that at least on the school board, it's important to remember that it's a democracy, even though there is a board president and other board officers, and on votes, important votes, unimportant votes, majority rules. And I think it's important that whether you were in the majority or the minority, that at least publicly, all the board members support the decision that was made, or any decision that was made by the board, because that's the only way that the board makes decisions is as a group. And so in the past, that hasn't always been the case, where people that didn't necessarily accept what the board's decision was, and that caused some serious problems in the community and with the district. On my prior service in the board, I occasionally disagreed or was in the minority on small issues, including and some big issues as far as cuts needed to be considered when the referendum failed back 10 years ago, and other cuts related to or decisions made on personnel. But once the board's decision was made, I didn't badmouth it in the community, and at least publicly supported it. Thanks.
Thanks, Ed. Next is Lisa Richter.
So I am bringing up just a unique situation. I am a special educator, so I am part of various IEP teams. I guess I don't want to call them a group, but IEP teams. And sometimes, in the world of education and teachers, we're all very passionate about children. And so a particular experience that I can speak to is that I disagreed with some educational programming design that the special education teacher had outlined. I wanted more of an inclusion model for my particular student. Felt that, the student was socially and emotionally ready for that situation, and to discuss that a little bit further. And I think it's important, as I think Rob had brought up, is coming from a collaborative aspect and not necessarily attacking the person, because it's just a disagreement with the issue at hand. And I feel like that's important when you're part of a group, is to remember that it's with the issue, not a person. And so, my approach has always been from a collaborative and problem-solving approach. I brought it up with the person in hand, and we discussed it and worked it out in a private space. And then we kind of came together back as a team and talked about various options and opinions that were brought up, and we came to a solution as a collaborative team or group. I feel like when there are disagreements and strong opinions related to decisions, it's important to be an active listener and to be collaborative. When there's a group of people and individuals that are coming together from all different walks of life, different opinions, different knowledge, you have to be respectful in that nature as well. And I feel like active listening, being collaborative, and having respect for others are my top three ways to kind of approach when there are strong disagreements. Thanks.
Thank you, Lisa. Next is Ron Blaha.
Well, there are always two sides to every story, and I always look to understand the issues involving a decision. With a strongly disagreed decision, I've either met with the individual or parties involved to discuss the disagreement, or I would put my thoughts in writing and submit them to the involved individual or participating members. Being a team player, win or lose, I'd move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Next is Jackie Stroik.
The particular situation that I recalled is actually a disagreement that I had with my management on a project that I was working on. It was a long-term project, and our management had set a very aggressive deadline. And after several months of working, it became clear that in order to meet that deadline, people would have to be working 60 to 80 hour weeks regularly, and that didn't really provide adequate time for really robust testing of this product before the date that it was supposed to be in production. I met with my manager to talk these concerns over, to talk about the cost to people and their health, their stress levels, and the cost to the product, that we were going to be turning over a product to our users that was not at the level or quality that we really want to turn out to them. And that the management team was not willing to move that date. So I just continued to work with my team, and we worked together to try to figure out the most efficient ways of, who should do what to try to get things done in the most efficient way to turn out the best product that we could in the time that we had. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Next is Alex Nelson.
Thank you. I'm part of a management team that we pretty frequently review change requests, process change requests that come to us from other parts of our organization. And there are times where there are folks that we work with or interface with that want to make changes that I don't particularly agree with. But I'll recognize that as a team, my voice is one of many, and there are times where my preference or my recommendation is going to be overruled. So, depending on the situation or, what is going on, I can find other opportunities to make my voice heard. But once the team has made a decision about something that we're moving forward with, I still need to find a way in order to support that and make sure that we're going to have successful outcomes. Ultimately, even if I'm not agreeing 100% with the change or the decision or what's happening, in the end, I'm still responsible to, other stakeholders, other people, and I need to find a way to ensure that they're going to have positive results and that we're going to be able to have success in our endeavors. So, support where I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Next is Jennifer Bushman.
So recently, as recent as 2 weeks ago, the leadership team that I'm on had to decide on aligning resources as a result of a recent reorganizational structure. And as a result of that reorg, I'm now supporting more business units and leaders as it relates to talent strategy. And so we had to make a decision to determine whether to keep the support structure the same or to realign resources to allow more support under me, given the heavier workload. We all had time to share our rationale for our decision, and a majority of the team ultimately wanted to keep the structure as is, meaning I would not have more resources aligned to support me with the higher volume work. So how did I handle that disagreement? I wasn't happy with the decision, but two things. One, the work is still there, so the maximizer in me already moved on to now how do I get this work done with the resources I have, and two, no hard feelings. I believe you can't fight every battle, and I'm a firm believer in seeking to understand, assuming positive intent, and really trying not to take it personal. Those are all hallmarks for a high-performing team, and that's what one should do when trying to move forward with when one faces a disagreement. Another thing that I do when I disagree with the decision is I allow for time. I try my hardest to not be reactive. And time allows me to step back and reflect and try to view the decision from another lens, because there might be things in my periphery that I may not see in the moment. Also, recognizing as a team, right, we're not always going to agree. In fact, that's another hallmark of a high-performing group, one that has diversity of thoughts and experience. Conflict can be healthy, and so can healthy discourse. And so I would be more concerned if our group, my leadership team, always agreed, or if any team always agreed, right? If there were no dissenting opinions, or if I witnessed what I thought to be groupthink, I would wonder if the group is really representing the thoughts and needs of the larger group they serve and the decision at hand.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next is Cash Cook.
So each night during the week, I work on a dock that moves freight from the area to Chicago and Minneapolis. And I've never really had a strongly disagreement with my managers, but when we get to forks in the road where all that freight has to go, if we run out of space, we have to outer route it to different locations. And while my manager may come up with one way that the freight will service, I could come up with another way, and we kind of have to work together to make sure that in the end it gets into the right wagon and makes it down the road, because we don't make any money if the customer's freight doesn't make it there on time. So we have to work together to make sure that even if we're going to outer route stuff, it's going to make it to its destination on its required date.
Thank you, Cash. Next is John Sikash.
I wanted to share an incident where I think makes the point here. As a landowner, fellow landowners, myself, friends and neighbors in our township were asked to present ideas on rezoning the land use in our township. I had some land I had intended to develop a portion of the land for business purposes. The final decision of the ruling body decided to place the land in a category where I'd no longer be able to use it for the intentions that I had planned. This would have meant a substantial financial loss for myself. The decision was difficult for me to accept, and I appealed. There was to no avail. As a result, I came to the conclusion not to hold any animosity towards my friends and fellow neighbors, and to make lemonade from the proverbial fruit. I looked into other uses for the land and was able to secure other situations and other avenues, and it eventually led to even be more profitable. As I look back, I realize it's good not to be reactive, but take proactive steps when you're in these situations. The thing I learned is that obstacles may sometimes be steps to a better conclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next is Christina Smith.
Let me start off by saying the way that I approach making a decision is to generally look at all different avenues and all different thoughts and all different perspectives so that I understand where people are coming from before I even make my decision to start with. Now, I actually have a hard time thinking of one strong decision or strong disagreement. Most of the time, if I do disagree, I disagree, but not necessarily strongly. And I think that comes from the fact that I do take things into perspective and everybody's background and thoughts and their perspective before I would even choose what my decision is. So when I do disagree with what decision a group has made, we just move on. You go to the next issue, you don't hold it against anybody, you monitor the outcome of the decision that was made, and if things need to be readdressed in the future, then they need to be looked at. But hopefully the outcome is good and everything works and we move on.
Thank you, Christina. Next is Miguel Campos.
Thank you. Not unlike Christina, I actually had some trouble coming up with something where I had strongly disagreed on something, but I've had plenty of situations where I did disagree on certain things, whether it be in work or in clubs or in school or what have you, or even within my family structure. But I am a person, like a lot of people have mentioned, I'm a good listener. I want to listen to everybody's opinions. I want to get the facts. I want to understand where everybody's coming from before I make my decision. And I don't presume to know that my opinion or my answer is the ultimate answer. So I'm entirely open to being wrong. And even if it's something that I do hold a high opinion or hold something in high regard, coming back to what Ed said, this is a democratic institution. This is a democratic board. If I've been outnumbered, then I'm going to move on. I'm going to accept it, and I'm going to move to the next issue at hand. If I believe in it strongly enough, there is always probably the next year or the next meeting, or just speaking with somebody on the side just to better understand how the decision was made, or maybe get more clarification that maybe I need to maybe have my mind changed. I'm open to that as well. So ultimately, I don't hold a grudge, never really have. Life's too short to do that. It's democratic, and I respect that process.
Thanks, Miguel. Next is Elizabeth Heimlich.
I too don't have very many disagreements. I think it might be because I'm a Libra and I tend to see both sides very easily. I weigh. I'll say, yes, you have a good point. Yes, you have a good point. I did, however, have one incident when I was on the board for the Rock Prairie Performing Arts Committee. We had been affiliated with UW Rock County, and then the funding was changed, and so we no longer had any money. I was the treasurer, and I was aware of this, and it was all volunteer. It was a community concert band with some students, and a community orchestra with some students, and then a youth student orchestra. And the only paying position was the concert mistress. Well, I didn't think that, since we had no funds coming in, I didn't think that the concert mistress should be paid. And the conductor and the professor at the university strongly disagreed. He said she needed to be paid. She was valuable and she needed to be there. And I was not a member of the orchestra, only of the band, so I didn't know it. But I did say, there's no money. I don't know how we can pay her. But we resolved it, and I became the main fundraiser for the committee and for the Rock Prairie Performing Arts, and we were able to retain Roxanne and pay her stipend so that everything went smoothly. But it took some convincing, but it worked.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next is Caroline Scaccia.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
There was one time, it's been a long time, so I had to kind of think back about this, because I've had disagreements before in the past with people, and I don't look at it as a negative thing by any means. But one incident, when I was on the Science Fair Committee in Chicago, when I was a teacher there, the Science Fair Committee is a citywide science fair, and it's a really, really big deal. And I recall we had some issues with the judging, the protocols that we were following, because that's a big deal. You have to have the judges, and they complete a big form for each science fair project. So we had discussions about it on our committee, and I disagreed with how they were going about it. The one thing I learned, I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics too much because it's even kind of hard for me to remember exactly what it was about, because it was probably a good 10 years ago. But I remember, because I was a lot younger, and I learned something from that debate. We may have debated harder, but we came up with a stronger solution that day. And I've always welcomed listening to other people. I think when we disagree, we push each other to think harder. And so I don't look at disagreements necessarily as something bad. I welcome them. And if people don't like my opinion, I'm okay with it. I'm a professional and I like listening to other people. I think it makes me also hear other people and see their side. So the way I handle it is you let it roll off your shoulders and you move on and you focus on the goal. And I think on the board, our focus is always in the best interest of the student. We always have to ask ourselves that question. So that's how I would handle it. Thanks.
Thank you, Caroline. Next is Carrie Prokop.
So I'm going to go back about 10 years when I was working at a nonprofit organization. We had 6 employees, 2 buildings. We had an executive director and then 2 center directors, and I was a center director. The way that we brought in money was all donation. And to motivate our donors, we would have 2 big fundraisers every year. And I got tasked with organizing and running one of those fundraisers. It was awful. The stress was so unreal. I had pizza boxes in our garage that were taller than me because that's what we had for dinner 3 weeks in a row. And my skill set was not in the wheelhouse of organizing and running big annual events. Anyway, so I went to my boss after the event, and it was relatively successful, not fantastic. Went to my boss and I said, you know what? Can we reorganize this a little bit? If I take something from another employee, could they have this event? Anyway, we met as a group, came back that nope, I got to do it every year, this event. And I sat back, I came home, talked with my husband, sat myself down, and I said, I have some choices. I could quit and get a different job. I could refuse and then ultimately get another job because I get fired. I could maybe do a lousy job and then they'd ask me not to do it anymore. And that's not me. My work ethic is
And
do the best
your time
I
is up,
can.
Carrie.
Oh, all right.
Thank you. And the last person to answer this question is Jack Elsinger.
This one was kind of a tough one for me too. I had to put a lot of thought into it. I tend to be even-tempered. I like to find common ground with people so we can move on. I don't hold grudges. But this goes back probably a dozen years ago when I was on the town board. And at that time, we were looking at building a new firehouse. If you've been to any of these town board meetings, they are lightly attended by the citizens at best usually. And we would often try to get the citizens' business done at the beginning part of the town board meeting, and then you kind of do the sausage making later on because it's just really boring and you don't want to ruin people's nights for them. And as the evening wore on and we were the only people there, just the people on the board, the topic of a parcel of land next to the town land came up, and 2 members started talking about getting that land. And it bordered on trying to figure out a way to really, I thought, cheat the person out of the land. And so I told them, I said, this may not be illegal what you guys are talking about, but at the very least, it's immoral and unethical. The room got really quiet. And that conversation never happened again. And we all went on. I worked with those people for a number of years after that, and we never had another conversation like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, moving on to question 6. Are you aware of any conflict of interest you may have with service on the school board. And we are going to start with Ed Morganroth.
In the interest of brevity, no.
Thanks, Ed. Lisa Richter.
There are no conflicts that I'm aware of. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Ron Blaha.
I do have a daughter who is a teacher with the Stevens Point school system, but I don't believe our relationship would interfere with my duties as a board member. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Jackie Stroik.
No, no conflicts.
Alex Nelson.
I'm aware of two potential issues. I guess I'm a Skyward employee, and I recognize that Skyward is a vendor of the school district. My wife also works for the school district, but I don't believe that either of those would interfere with my ability to participate as a board member.
Thank you, Alex. Jennifer Bushman.
No conflicts of interest.
Cash Cook.
No, I see no conflict.
John Sikosh.
I'm not aware of any conflicts. Thank you.
Christina Smith.
My husband is a teacher at SPASH. Otherwise, I'm aware of no other conflicts of interest.
Miguel Campos.
No, not at this time.
Elizabeth Heimlich.
There are no conflicts that I'm aware of.
Caroline Scaccia.
No, I'm not aware of any conflicts.
Carrie Prokop.
Husband is a district administrator. I don't think that that would be a conflict. In fact, I think it'd be a good enhancement.
Jack Elsinger.
No, I have no conflicts.
And Rob Mansky.
I'm not aware of any conflict.
Okay, and the last question. If you are appointed to the school board, is it your intention to run for your seat in the April 2022 election? Lisa Richter.
Yes, it would be my intention to run in the 2022 election.
Ron Blaha.
My intention to run for a seat on the April 2022 election, it would be determined by the results of my board membership. If the board members and the citizens within our district felt that I would contribute to the betterment of our school system, I would consider running in the April 2022 election. And may I also just give a big thank you to all of the board members, staff, teachers, and students for all of your educational efforts during this very trying time. Thank you.
Jackie Stroik.
Yes, it would be my intention to run at that time.
Alex Nelson.
Yes, my intention would be to run.
Jennifer Bushman.
Yes, I plan to run in the April 2022 election.
Cash Cook.
Yes, it would be my intention to run.
John Sikosh.
Yes, I plan to do so. I believe that the first term here would give me an opportunity for a learning curve so I could be a more effective member in the future. Thank you.
Christina Smith.
Yes, it would be my intention to run.
Miguel Campos.
Yes, it is my intention to run in the April 2022 election.
Elizabeth Heimlich.
Yes, I would be willing to run again for the 2022 election.
Caroline Scaccia.
Yes, at this time, it is my intention to run in April 2022.
Carrie Prokop.
Yes, I would intend to run also.
Jack Elsinger.
At this time, it's impossible to say. I would wait until after I had experience on the board to determine if my presence on the board was actually a true benefit. Thank you.
Rob Mansky
Yes, it would be my intention to run.
and Ed Morganroth.
Yes, it would be my intention to run in 2022.
Okay, that concludes our questions. Thank you so much. Great job to all. I can tell you, I'm glad I don't have to vote right now because we've got some very strong candidates, and unfortunately, there's only going to be one person that will be appointed tonight, and there will be 14 that won't. Please don't leave disappointed. Quite frankly, the odds are not against you if you're an odds maker. But I will say this: please continue to get involved. I know most of you are involved to some degree, but there are openings that occur at the board level occasionally. We have committees that are suspended this year because of COVID. But there's opportunities to get involved in other ways. So thank you so much for your time. I know it was a long evening, but we greatly appreciate it. Now, we are going to start the voting process. Those in the room have a ballot, and as Meg said, I'll go around and collect them. Those of you, the 4 board members that are online, you're going to email Carlyn, and she'll fill out a ballot, and Carlyn and I are going to go back here and count votes. Again, it takes a majority to be chosen for the appointment. If it's 5 votes out of the gate, the voting process will be over. Other than that, we take the top 2, unless we have a bunch of ones in there, and we'll work through that. And please note that this is what we have done in the past, and that we had our legal counsel review this information as well.
That's just what I was thinking.
The awkward silence.
Picking up the votes here.
I am.
Ready, go.
Got votes coming in, Carlin? No? Okay. We're waiting on, Barb, did you email? Barb did? Mike, I can't see you, you're not on.
Yes, I did email.
Thank you. Ann?
Can we have more than one vote?
Ann did.
Working on it. Yep, just working on it right now.
Thank you, Ann. And Judy?
Yes, I did, and thank you all for vying for this position. This is awesome to see this many people interested.
feeling. This would be a pizza night.
You just took the words out of my- I was just gonna say to you, we need to have pizza. You read my mind. This is getting scary. That you're reading my mind. That's scary. So I was looking at the weather forecast. The high on Sunday is -1.
Yeah. Hey, that's called winter.
I know. So Friday it's 9. The high is 9.
This is Rob Lansky and Jennifer Bushman.
I don't want to come in.
Oh, you want to enjoy the nice weather. Yeah,
It was
we
so
lucked
nice
out.
today though, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
we lucked out this year.
We really lucked out this year. I can't.
Okay, we have narrowed it down to 2 candidates. Can you guys see me?
Yep.
Rob Mansky has 4 votes. Jennifer Bushman has 2 votes. Miguel Campos has 1 and Ed Morgenroth 1. So the runoff will be between Rob Mansky and Jennifer Bushman. So those online, email your selection to Carlin between Jennifer Bushman and Rob Mansky. And the final vote is Rob Mansky, 6-2. Congratulations, Rob.
Thank you all very much. I am very surprised and very humbled, so thank you.
As Craig said, again, on behalf of the board, and I think all the board members should feel free to speak if you would like, but again, it's just incredible that we had such a strong positive response from such a diverse group of people from our community. And as Craig noted, we encourage you to stay on top of being involved in the district if you currently are. If you're not considering getting involved in the district, we are currently entering the 5th year of our 5-year strategic plan for this next year. It is our intention as a district to begin that new strategic planning process we're hoping for this fall. And that process, as occurred the last time, involves a strong group from the community to help us chart that course. So keep yourselves in mind for that as we move forward. And again, we really appreciate the willingness to put your name in the ring and provide us with direction even in your answers today for how we should be moving forward with our district. Okay, with that, I guess I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second?
I have a motion to adjourn in a second. All those in favor with aye?
Aye.
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 We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.